You know what's worse than your ex-husband showing up uninvited to your 4th of July barbecue? When he arrives as your younger sister's +1, wearing the grin of a man who's just found a loophole in your divorce agreement. There I was, Sylvie Lockhart, standing in my meticulously decorated backyard, spatula frozen mid-flip, as my sister Thea strolled through my patio doors with Archie Bennett, the man who had promised to love me until death, but apparently found a technicality when he realized my sister was available. The patriotic bunting I'd hung that morning suddenly felt like crime scene tape marking off the death of family loyalty. I had exactly 12 seconds to process this betrayal before my perfectly planned barbecue imploded. My mother Martha's white wine spritzer hit the deck as she dramatically collapsed into a lounge chair, hand pressed to her heart like she was auditioning for a Life Alert commercial. My father Gerald, startled by Mom's performance, knocked over the entire grill, sending hamburger patties skidding across my newly sealed patio like hockey pucks. And there, capturing every excruciating second on his vintage Super 8 camera, was my 16-year-old son Noah, already mentally calculating how many film festival submissions this documentary on family dysfunction would qualify for. "Surprise!" Thea chirped, as if she'd brought a nice bottle of rosé instead of emotional devastation. Her yoga-toned arm was linked through Archie's, and she was wearing the sundress I'd left behind during the divorce because it reminded me too much of our anniversary trip to Napa. "Sylvie?" Archie nodded, with the practiced casual tone of someone pretending they hadn't spent 11 years of marriage learning exactly which of my buttons to push. "You look, well." The silent edition of "considering everything" hung in the air like the smoke from my now flaming grill. Dad was attempting to extinguish the fire with my prize-winning potato salad, which seemed like an appropriate metaphor for what was happening to my dignity. "What a pleasant surprise," I replied, in the same tone I use when the Whole Foods cashier tells me my favorite ice cream has been discontinued. "I didn't realize you two were—" I gestured vaguely with my spatula, accidentally flicking barbecue sauce onto my mother's designer sunglasses. "Dating? Yeah, it just kind of happened," Thea shrugged, as if we were discussing her spontaneous decision to try bangs, not her choice to date my children's father. "The universe just brought us together at SoulCycle 3 months ago. 3 months. Which meant this little arrangement had been going on since Easter, when Thea had asked so many detailed questions about my divorce settlement that I'd assumed she was considering leaving her CrossFit instructor boyfriend. Turns out she was just conducting market research. "The universe," I repeated flatly. "How cosmic. And neither of you thought to mention this alignment of stars to me before showing up at my house? Where my son lives." As if on cue, Noah zoomed in dramatically on my face, whispering conflict establishment to himself. The kid had been watching too many Scorsese documentaries since the divorce. "We wanted to tell you in person," Archie offered, helping himself to a beer from the cooler. The craft IPA I'd bought specifically because he once mentioned liking it, before I remembered I was supposed to hate him now. It seemed like the respectful thing to do. "Absolutely," I nodded. "Nothing says respect like ambushing someone at their own patriotic celebration. Very George Washington of you, crossing my Delaware without warning." My neighbor Deirdre, who had been hovering near the guacamole station absorbing every syllable to relay to our HOA gossip chain, suddenly became very interested in rearranging the corn chip bowl. "Mom, I'm getting great footage," Noah stage whispered, panning between my frozen smile and Archie's hand, which was now resting comfortably on the small of Thea's back, the same spot he used to rest his hand on mine before he decided our marriage was as disposable as the paper plates I was now crushing in my white-knuckled grip. My father had abandoned his firefighting efforts and was now stress-eating charred hamburger buns directly from the package. My mother had recovered enough to drain her emergency flask, which she thought I didn't know about but had been a fixture in her Kate Spade purse since Thea and I had both hit puberty in the same tumultuous year. "Everyone," I announced, channeling my inner suburban hostess, "let's all just enjoy the party. It's Independence Day, after all." The irony of celebrating freedom while feeling trapped in a Tennessee Williams play wasn't lost on me. For the next hour, I performed the delicate ballet of serving coleslaw while avoiding eye contact with the happy couple, who had settled into the patio love seat I'd picked out during my post-divorce reclaim your space redecorating frenzy. Thea was feeding Archie toasted marshmallows like he was a baby bird, and he was laughing at her jokes. The same man who had once told me my sense of humor was a bit much for dinner parties. The alcohol supply depleted at roughly triple the expected rate. Deirdre's husband Bruce was on his fifth bourbon, deeply uncomfortable but unwilling to leave what he later described to the entire neighborhood as the best free entertainment since the Wilsons' Christmas lights caught their palm tree on fire. It was when I went inside to get more ice that I spotted it on the bookshelf. Our wedding album, which Noah had apparently taken out earlier for some family history project. The white leather cover seemed to glow with accusation in the afternoon light streaming through my farmhouse-style windows. Without fully forming the thought, I found myself walking back outside, album in hand. "Hey everyone, I found some old photos we might enjoy," I called out with the forced cheer of a kindergarten teacher on the last day before summer break. "Since we're having such a lovely family reunion." Thea's eyes widened as she recognized the album. Archie suddenly became very interested in the label on his beer bottle. "Look, Noah, here's when Aunt Thea was my maid of honor. Remember she gave that beautiful speech about sacred bonds of trust?" I flipped to a page where Thea was fixing my veil, both of us laughing. "And here's Dad walking me down the aisle to give me away to Archie," which apparently wasn't the last time a Lockhart would be handed over to him. Noah's camera whirred closer, capturing my mother's grimace and my father's sudden fascination with the grill's propane tank settings. "Oh, and my favorite," I continued, flipping to our cake-cutting photo. "Look how young we were, Archie. Only 11 short years, 2 kids, and 1 midlife crisis ago." "Sylvie?" Archie started, his tone carrying that patronizing note that always preceded him explaining why I was overreacting. What happened next wasn't entirely planned. As I stepped forward to show him the photo more closely, my foot caught on absolutely nothing, a talent I've perfected over years of creating convenient accidents. The album sailed from my hands in a beautiful arc, landing with a satisfying splash in the center of the pool, pages blooming open like a water lily of matrimonial memories. "Oops," I said, channeling Britney circa 2007. "How clumsy of me." As everyone stared at the album slowly sinking to the bottom of the pool, I calmly picked up the serving spoon and returned to the buffet table. "Who wants more macaroni salad?" I made it with the special dressing Archie always said gave him heartburn. And that, my friends, was just the first hour of how I discovered that in the great American tradition, revenge is a dish best served with barbecue sauce and a side of perfectly timed accident. The wedding album created gorgeous ink blooms as it settled at the bottom of my pool, much like my dignity was creating a lovely pattern as it scattered across my backyard. Noah zoomed in on the underwater spectacle, whispering symbolic visual metaphor into his camera while Thea performed the most dramatic gasp I'd heard since she failed to place at her middle school talent show. Sylvie Jean Lockhart. My mother had suddenly recovered enough to use my full name, the universal signal that I was now the villain in this Lifetime movie. That album had historical family value. So did my marriage vows, Mom, but apparently those were biodegradable, I replied, aggressively stirring the macaroni salad like I was trying to interrogate information out of it. Archie, ever the marketing executive, recognized a PR crisis when he saw one. "It's fine, Martha. I have digital copies of all the important photos." He placed his hand on my mother's shoulder, the dutiful almost son-in-law. "Well, son-in-law adjacent now, I suppose." "Son-in-law relocated." "Of course you do," I muttered, always prepared with a backup plan. Thea, demonstrating her remarkable gift for reading a room exactly wrong, decided this was the perfect moment to clear the air. "Sylvie, we were hoping today could be the start of our new normal. You know, blended family style." "Blended family?" I repeated, my eyebrows achieving heights previously unreached. "Like a smoothie? Because this feels more like everyone's been put through a meat grinder." I gestured to my father, who was now stress-eating the decorative display of red, white, and blue cupcakes I'd spent 3 hours arranging that morning. My darling son, apparently deciding his documentary needed a plot twist, abandoned his camera on a lawn chair and approached the buffet table. At 16, Noah had inherited his father's height and my talent for perfect timing. So, Dad, since you're dating Aunt Thea now, what should I call her? Stepmom? Aunt Mom? The sequel? He asked, loudly enough for the neighbors on both sides of my privacy fence to hear. The kid deserved an Emmy for that delivery. Archie choked on his beer while Thea's smile froze in that particular way that yoga instructors smile when they're telling you to hold a pose that's actually dislocating your shoulder. Noah, honey, I'll always just be your Aunt Thea, she answered, her voice transitioning to that special sing-song tone adults use when they're trying to defuse a conversational bomb while secretly checking the exits. Cool, cool, Noah nodded, filling his plate with chips. Just checking the new family org chart, trying to figure out if this makes me my own cousin. My father snorted so hard he inhaled a piece of cupcake wrapper. As my mother pounded him on the back, Deirdre and Bruce exchanged looks that clearly communicated their intention to skip their upcoming anniversary cruise if it meant missing the next episode of this neighborhood dumpster fire. Noah! Archie started, his face attempting an expression somewhere between stern father and cool new boyfriend, failing spectacularly at both. This is obviously an adjustment for everyone. Why don't we discuss how you're sleeping with Mom's sister? Great idea, Noah finished, with the brutal efficiency only teenagers can achieve. He then grabbed 2 sodas and retreated to his camera, leaving a mushroom cloud of awkwardness behind him. He's still processing, I explained unnecessarily, while internally high-fiving my son. The divorce has been hard on him. You've always let him speak to adults that way, Archie said quietly, as if we were having one of our old parenting disagreements and not standing in the smoking crater of our former family. And you've always had a talent for rearranging furniture, I replied sweetly, loading a plate with corn on the cob. First the living room, then custody arrangements, now family members. Thea, attempting to salvage the situation, plastered on her most serene yoga instructor smile. We're all just trying to find happiness, Sylvie. Archie and I didn't plan this. Really? Because your planner was always color-coded down to the minute. Remember how you organized my bridal shower? Penis straws from 3:15 to 3:45 p.m., gift opening from 3:46 to 4:52. The neighbor's teenage daughter, who had wandered over to use our pool, suddenly became very interested in the conversation. That's not fair, Thea replied, her voice quivering just enough to make my mother shoot me a warning look. You know what's not fair? I set down my serving spoon with a clang that made everyone jump. Coming to my house, where I've invited friends and neighbors, to debut your relationship with my ex-husband? On Independence Day. The irony is just, I gestured vaguely at the patriotic decorations surrounding us. It's like breaking up with someone on Valentine's Day or firing someone on Labor Day. There's a special circle in Hallmark hell for that kind of timing. We thought a family gathering would be better than telling you one-on-one, Archie offered, clearly regretting this strategic decision as much as his 2018 investment in cryptocurrency. Because witnesses prevent homicide? I asked brightly. Because family supports each other, my mother interjected, having appointed herself mediator despite being on her 3rd Valium-enhanced spritzer. And we're still family. I looked around at my backyard, transformed now from Instagram-worthy patriotic celebration to what felt like a very special episode of Jerry Springer, Suburban Edition. The American flag napkins seemed to be mocking me, little stars and stripes witnessing my humiliation. Speaking of family, I said, reaching for my phone, remember how Dad always said, pictures or it didn't happen? Let's memorialize this special moment. Before anyone could object, I'd corralled everyone into a group photo, positioning Archie and Thea together with my parents on either side. Noah, you take it, I insisted, handing him my phone while retrieving his camera. I'll man your documentary for a minute. As Noah snapped the photo, I quietly pressed record on his camera, making sure to capture every excruciating second of fake smiles and awkward body language. Perfect, I declared. One for the new family album. I'll make sure it's laminated. Waterproof. I glanced meaningfully at the pool. The tension was interrupted by Deirdre's husband Bruce, who had reached the philosophical stage of intoxication. You know what's crazy? He announced to no one in particular. Sylvie designed 3 rooms in our house. She made everything beautiful. Everything. And Archie, man, you walked away from that? For her sister? He gestured with his bourbon toward Thea, sloshing some onto my patio stones. That's some Shakespeare-level tragedy right there. A silence fell over the gathering, broken only by the sound of my father unwrapping another cupcake. I think what Bruce means, Deirdre attempted damage control, is that divorce is complicated and we shouldn't judge. No, what Bruce means, Bruce interrupted, is that it's messed up. It's messed up and we're all pretending it's not messed up because the potato salad is really good. He raised his glass to me in sloppy salute. I'd never appreciated Deirdre's husband more. Their Christmas gift had just been upgraded from homemade cookies to a premium wine basket. As the afternoon wore on, the strain of maintaining polite conversation became increasingly unbearable. Archie tried explaining how he and Thea had reconnected at SoulCycle, conveniently leaving out how often he'd mocked indoor cycling during our marriage as glorified sitting. Thea kept touching his arm possessively while shooting me nervous glances, as if checking whether each touch was landing like the emotional gut punches they were. The final straw came when my mother, 3 drinks past discretion, started reminiscing about my wedding day. It was just magical, she sighed, apparently forgetting that one of her daughters was now dating the groom from that magical day. Sylvie was such a beautiful bride. Remember the vows, Archie? So moving. Archie had the decency to look uncomfortable. It was a beautiful ceremony. It was, Thea agreed, then realized her mistake as everyone turned to stare at her. I mean, as the maid of honor, I had the best view. Second best view now, apparently, I muttered just loud enough to be heard. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across my carefully arranged backyard, I stood to begin clearing plates. Archie, perhaps attempting to normalize the situation, stood to help me. An act so familiar, it sent a jolt of muscle memory through my body before anger replaced it. Thanks, I said stiffly, but I've gotten pretty good at cleaning up messes on my own lately. Sylvie, he started. I cut him off. Fair warning. The HOA meeting next Tuesday is voting on amending the community relationship bylaws. Article 4, Section B may soon prohibit dating your ex's siblings within a 3-block radius. I've been gathering signatures. His confusion was almost worth the whole afternoon. She's kidding, Noah clarified, returning to his filming position. But man, your face was documentary gold. As I carried a stack of plates inside, I heard Thea ask, "Should we maybe go?" Just as Bruce loudly proclaimed, "This is better than when the Hendersons' dog interrupted the Easter egg hunt in a very inappropriate way." I paused at the patio door and turned around. Actually, before anyone leaves, I think Noah has an announcement about his documentary project. Don't you, honey? Noah looked at me. Confusion crossing his face before understanding dawned. My son, bless his devious heart, caught on immediately. Oh, right. He held up his camera triumphantly. My documentary got pre-selected for the Young Filmmakers Showcase. They want raw family footage and today's been perfect. Archie and Thea exchanged panicked glances. Don't worry, I added with my sweetest smile. I'm sure they'll edit out anything too revealing. Or not. Art is so unpredictable these days. Nothing scatters a family gathering faster than the threat of public documentation. Within 20 minutes, my backyard had emptied like a Target on Black Friday after the last discounted TV is sold. Only my parents remained, with my mother methodically collecting abandoned cups while muttering about family legacy, and my father attempting to resurrect the grill situation, likely to avoid actual conversation. Well, I said, collapsing into an Adirondack chair and kicking off my sandals. That went exactly as planned. You planned for your sister to bring your ex-husband to your barbecue? My father asked, genuinely confused. No, Dad. That was sarcasm. It's this thing I do to avoid screaming into the void. Noah sat down beside me, camera finally powered down. For real though, Mom, this footage is gold. The way Aunt Thea kept touching Dad's arm while staring at you for approval, textbook passive aggression, and when he tried to help with the dishes, pure dramatic irony. My son, the Scorsese of suburban treachery, I said, ruffling his hair. Just remember, documentary ethics require consent forms. Already got verbal consent when Dad was helping himself to a third burger. I asked if I could use today's footage for my school project, and he nodded. I looked at my son with newfound respect. You're either going to be a brilliant filmmaker or an exceptional lawyer. Possibly both. The world isn't ready. My mother emerged from the house, her cleaning frenzy apparently complete. Sylvia Jean, this situation is unfortunate, but your behavior today was unbecoming. Unbecoming? I repeated. Mom, this isn't Victorian England. Thea is dating my ex-husband. I think I'm entitled to a little unbecoming. Your sister deserves happiness too, she insisted, though her expression suggested she found the situation as distasteful as finding a hair in her country club salad. And she couldn't find it with any of the other 1.8 million men in Phoenix? She had to go dumpster diving in my romantic past? Thea has always looked up to you, my father interjected, abandoning all pretense of grill repair. Maybe this is her way of, I don't know, being like her big sister. By dating my leftovers? Dad, that's not admiration, that's identity theft with extra steps. My phone chimed with a text notification. Speak of the she-devil, I muttered, seeing Thea's name on the screen. I opened the message, read it twice, then let out a laugh so sharp it made my mother jump. What is it? Noah asked, leaning over. Your aunt wants to clear the air over brunch tomorrow. Just the two of us. I showed him the text. Apparently, she's concerned about family harmony and moving forward positively. Are you going to go? My mother asked hopefully. Oh, I'm absolutely going, I replied, already mentally assembling my outfit. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't support Thea in her time of whatever this is? Sylvie, my father warned, using his old courtroom voice from his days as a paralegal. Don't make this worse. I'm not making anything worse. I'm having brunch with my sister. It's practically a Hallmark movie. After my parents finally left, my mother with one last pointed look and my father with an awkward pat on my shoulder, Noah and I retreated to the kitchen to finish cleaning up. You're plotting something, Noah observed, loading the dishwasher with the precision of someone who had been lectured multiple times about optimal dish placement. I'm not plotting. I'm strategizing. Same thing, different tax bracket. I smiled despite myself. When did you get so cynical? Probably around the time Dad moved out and started posting midlife crisis gym selfies on Instagram. He closed the dishwasher and leaned against the counter. Seriously though, Mom, what are you going to do? I considered my son's question as I wiped down the countertops. What was I going to do? The initial shock was wearing off, leaving behind a cold clarity I hadn't felt since the day I found Archie's text messages to his work colleague Jessica 2 years ago. Messages that had ultimately led to our divorce after I discovered his late meetings were actually dates at restaurants just far enough from our neighborhood to avoid detection. Noah, hand me your laptop, I said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow, but fetched it from the living room. I opened it and started typing. First, I'm going to this brunch. Then I'm going to have a very enlightening conversation with your aunt. About what? I turned the laptop screen toward him, showing the social media profile I'd pulled up. About how your father hasn't changed a bit. Noah's eyes widened as he scanned the Instagram page belonging to a woman named Melissa Coleman, a blonde SoulCycle instructor whose recent posts featured a familiar-looking wristwatch in the corner of several photos, along with captions about secret meetings and waiting for him to make a choice. Is that Dad's watch? Noah asked, zooming in on one particularly damning photo. The one I got him for our 10th anniversary? With the custom engraving? Absolutely. So he's cheating on Aunt Thea too? I closed the laptop. Let's just say your father has a type. Women who aren't his current partner. How long have you known? I just connected the dots today. Remember when your dad mentioned reconnecting with Thea at SoulCycle 3 months ago? Well, Melissa here has been his instructor for 6 months, according to her profile. The timestamps align perfectly with when he started getting really into indoor cycling. Noah processed this information with a maturity that made my heart ache. So what's the plan? First, we verify. I need to be absolutely certain. I reopened the laptop and pulled up a calendar app, showing Noah the scheduling system for the SoulCycle studio. Your dad always goes to the 6 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday classes, according to what he told the custody mediator about his fitness routine. And look who teaches those classes. Melissa Coleman, Noah read. But how do you know he's actually, you know? I don't, not with absolute certainty. But there's an easy way to find out. I pulled up another screen, this time showing an email confirmation. I've just signed up for this Tuesday's 6 a.m. class under a fake name. If I see anything suspicious, I'll have my answer. That's borderline stalker behavior, Noah pointed out. It's investigative journalism, I corrected. Supporting your documentary career. And if you're right, what then? I closed the laptop again. Then I give your Aunt Thea exactly what she deserves. The truth. The next morning, I arrived at Perch, the trendy brunch spot Thea had selected downtown, 15 minutes early. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, casual enough to suggest I wasn't trying too hard, but polished enough to telegraph that I wasn't falling apart. My hair was blown out, my makeup subtle but flawless, and I'd chosen a sundress that Archie had always said made me look too intense, code for too intimidating for his fragile ego. I ordered a mimosa and waited, mentally rehearsing what I would say. When Thea arrived, her face registered genuine surprise at seeing me already seated and composed. She'd clearly expected to establish home field advantage by arriving first. "Sylvie," she greeted me, air kissing near my cheek. "You look great. You sound surprised." I smiled. "Did you expect me to show up in sweatpants and smeared mascara? Sorry to disappoint." Thea sat down, arranging her designer handbag, a knockoff of the one I'd received from Archie last Christmas, beside her chair. "I just meant you look well, considering everything. Amazing what righteous indignation can do for the complexion. Better than Botox." A server approached, and Thea ordered an elaborate avocado toast with 6 modifications and a green juice. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. "So," she began once the server had left. "Yesterday was awkward." Was it? I hadn't noticed over the sound of my wedding album drowning and my son contemplating whether he's his own cousin now. Thea had the decency to blush. "I know how this looks. Like you're dating my ex-husband? Because that's exactly what it looks like, Thea. It just happened. We didn't plan it. Things don't just happen. The Spanish influenza just happened. This was a series of choices." She fidgeted with her napkin. "Archie and I have a connection. We understand each other. That's fascinating, considering he still doesn't understand how to separate laundry after 11 years of marriage. But I'm sure you'll fare better." Our food arrived, creating a momentary buffer in the conversation. I watched as Thea meticulously arranged her avocado toast for what I assumed would be an Instagram post later. "I didn't ask you here to argue," she finally said. "I want us to find a way forward. For the family's sake." By family, do you mean the one you're trying to insert yourself into? Because Noah's doing just fine without an aunt-stepmom hybrid. Noah adores me. We've always had a special bond. I nearly choked on my mimosa. He tolerates you at Christmas because you bring good gifts. That's not a bond. It's capitalism. Thea's eyes narrowed. You're just bitter because Archie moved on. He told me how controlling you were, how you suffocated him. Is that what he said? I took a deliberate sip of my drink. Funny. That's exactly what he told me about his first girlfriend after college, and his work colleague Jessica during our marriage. It's almost like he has a script. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Thea's face before she masked it. Our situation is different. Of course it is. I smiled sweetly. You're special. Just like I was special, and Jessica was special, and I'm willing to bet Melissa is special too. Who's Melissa? I checked my watch. Oh, would you look at the time? I have to run. Early appointment tomorrow morning. I stood, dropping enough cash to cover my meal. This was illuminating, Thea. Really? Let's do it again sometime after my SoulCycle class on Tuesday. The confusion on her face was absolutely priceless. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. Sylvie, you don't even like spinning. I turned and offered my most enigmatic smile. People change, Thea, but some people never do. Food for thought with your avocado toast. Monday morning, Noah helped me prepare for my covert SoulCycle mission with all the seriousness of a CIA handler briefing a field agent. Remember, maintain visual confirmation but keep a low profile, he instructed, adjusting the baseball cap he'd insisted I wear as part of my disguise. Dad's never seen you in workout clothes before 9 a.m., so that alone should make you unrecognizable. Very funny, I replied, zipping up a borrowed athletic jacket with a hood. I'm not completely out of shape, you know. I did hot yoga twice last month. Mom, struggling to touch your toes while sweating in a room full of strangers isn't exactly Navy SEAL training. I ruffled his hair, something he normally protested but allowed this morning in solidarity with Operation Cheater Cheater. I've got this. I signed up under Jane Smith and paid cash for a drop-in class. Jane Smith? Really? That's the most generic alias ever. Why not go with something like Phoenix Skywalker while you're being subtle? Because I want to be forgettable, not the main character in your father's next therapy session. Noah handed me his GoPro. For documentation purposes. Absolutely not. I'm gathering intel, not creating evidence that could be used against me in a restraining order. Fine. But take detailed notes. This is the climax of my documentary. I kissed his forehead. You're enjoying this way too much. Go to school and try to act normal if you see your aunt or father. Please. I've been acting normal around adults having meltdowns my entire life. It's practically my superpower. The Soul Cycle studio at 5:45 a.m. was a special circle of hell I hadn't previously experienced. Enthusiastic morning people in coordinated athleisure bounced on the balls of their feet, clutching water bottles and chatting about protein shakes while I struggled to adjust the seat height on my torture device disguised as exercise equipment. I positioned myself in the back corner, cap pulled low, hoping Archie wouldn't notice me among the sea of similarly dressed fitness enthusiasts. The studio was dimly lit with purple mood lighting. Small mercies. At exactly 5:52 a.m., Archie strode in wearing form-fitting cycling gear that made me momentarily question my life choices that had led me to this pre-dawn surveillance operation. He headed straight for a front-row bike, high-fiving several regulars along the way. Classic Archie, always needing to be seen, always performing. The instructor, Melissa Coleman, entered at 5:59 a.m. to enthusiastic applause. She was everything I'd expected from her Instagram. Blonde, toned, and radiating that particular brand of toxic positivity that suggests drinking celery juice can solve all your problems. She scanned the room, her eyes lingering on Archie for a beat too long, her smile shifting from professional to intimate in a microsecond. If I hadn't been looking for it, I might have missed it. But the visual confirmation hit me like a bucket of ice water. The class itself was a 45-minute assault on every muscle I'd neglected since my divorce. While I pedaled miserably in the back, wondering if it was possible to die from thigh burn, I watched the subtle choreography between Archie and Melissa, the unnecessary adjustments to his form that involved touching his shoulders, the private jokes shouted over pulsating music, the lingering eye contact during inspirational segments about breaking free and finding your truth. By the cool-down stretch, I was simultaneously exhausted and energized by fury, but I still needed concrete proof. Something more than suggestive glances and questionable playlist dedications. I didn't have to wait long. As the class emptied, I lingered by the water station, face partially obscured by my towel. Archie hung back, pretending to adjust his shoelaces until most people had left. Then Melissa approached him, leaning in close. Too close for a student-teacher relationship that wasn't violating several ethical boundaries. "Same time Thursday?" she asked, her hand casually resting on his arm. "Actually," he replied, lowering his voice to a volume he clearly thought was discreet. "I was thinking maybe tonight? Thea's got that workshop in Sedona until tomorrow." Melissa smiled. "My place. 8 o'clock. Don't be late this time." "Wouldn't dream of it," Archie replied, with the same smile he'd once used to convince me his work dinners were absolutely necessary and totally innocent. I'd seen enough. I slipped out before either could notice me, my heart pounding harder than it had during the actual workout. In my car, I pulled out my phone and texted Noah. "Mission accomplished. Solid gold intel acquired. Phase 2 is a go." His reply came seconds later. "Excellent work, Agent Mom. We'll prepare documentation materials." By Wednesday afternoon, Noah and I had assembled what he dramatically referred to as the dossier. Photos from Melissa's social media showing Archie's distinctive watch, and even, in one poorly angled mirror selfie, part of his face. Screenshots of Thea's own Instagram posts showing her in Sedona during times when Archie was clearly somewhere else, based on his cycling app data that Noah had somehow accessed. It's public, Mom. He literally broadcasts his routes to everyone. The man has zero privacy settings. I'd arranged to meet Thea for coffee at the trendy cafe inside her favorite bookstore. Public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for a meaningful conversation. When she arrived, 15 minutes late and already on her phone, I had everything prepared. "Sorry I'm late," she said, not sounding remotely sorry. "Archie and I were having brunch with the Hendersons. You remember Bruce and Carol? From your spin class?" "I remember them from my neighborhood, Thea. They live 3 doors down." "Right, of course." She settled in, arranging herself artfully in the chair. "Anyway, I'm glad you reached out. I think our last conversation ended a bit abruptly." "It did," I agreed. "I wasn't ready to hear everything then. But I am now. In fact, I'd like to share something with you." I slid a manila envelope across the table. Thea looked at it skeptically. "What's this? Divorce papers? Because we've already been through that drama." "Just open it." She did, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief as she flipped through the contents. "What am I looking at exactly?" "Evidence that your boyfriend, my ex-husband, is cheating on you with his SoulCycle instructor Melissa Coleman, the same way he cheated on me with Jessica from work." Thea's face flushed. "These are just random photos. This proves nothing." Page 4 has a screenshot of his cycling app showing him at her apartment complex at midnight last week, when he told you he was at a client dinner. I added the property records showing she owns Unit 3B. Public records are amazing, aren't they? She flipped to the page, her carefully manicured facade beginning to crack. "He could have been visiting someone else there." "Funny coincidence that would be," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "Especially since page 6 shows their text exchange that Noah recovered from the family cloud account Archie forgot to disconnect from." Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to the damning messages. I wasn't proud of the invasion of privacy, but as Noah had pointed out, moral high ground doesn't make for compelling third acts, Mom. "I don't understand," Thea whispered. "We've only been together 3 months. And he's been seeing Melissa for at least 2 of those months," I finished. "It's his pattern, Thea. He did it to me with Jessica and before me with his college girlfriend. He's incapable of fidelity." The color drained from her face. "Why are you showing me this? To hurt me? To say, 'I told you so'?" I leaned forward. "Believe it or not, I'm showing you this because you're still my sister. And as much as you've hurt me, I don't want you to waste years of your life like I did, thinking you're the problem. That if you just try harder or look better or complain less, he'll finally be faithful." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought I was special. That what happened with you was different." Every woman in Archie's life thought she was special. That's his superpower. Making each woman feel like she's the exception, not the rule. Thea wiped at her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "What do I do now?" "That's entirely up to you," I replied, gathering my things. "But if I were you, I'd start by changing the locks on your yoga studio. He still has the key you gave him, right? The just-in-case key?" She nodded numbly. "Trust me on this. With Archie, there's always a just-in-case." I stood to leave, but Thea grabbed my wrist. "Wait, I need to know one thing. If you knew about Melissa, why tell me? Why not just let me find out the hard way?" I looked down at my sister, seeing for the first time in years not my competitor, but the girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. "Because then you'd be me, Thea. And one of me in this family is more than enough." As I walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Phase 2 complete?" I typed back, "Target neutralized. Prepare for fallout." His response came quickly. "Copy that. Dad just called, sounds stressed, asked if he could come over tonight to talk about some things." I smiled to myself as I got into my car. Perfect. Set the stage for Phase 3, grand finale. Archie arrived at 7:30 p.m. sharp, his hair still damp from what I assumed was a hasty shower at Melissa's apartment. He stood on my doorstep, our old doorstep, clutching a bottle of wine from the vineyard we'd visited on our 10th anniversary, a peace offering so transparent I could practically see through to his ulterior motives. "Come in," I said, taking the wine but making no promises about drinking it. Noah's upstairs finishing homework. Actually, Archie shifted uncomfortably. I was hoping we could talk privately. Adult to adult. Fascinating concept, I replied. Let me just check if the adult I'm speaking with is the same one who's dating my sister while simultaneously pursuing his spin instructor, or if I'm meeting a new persona tonight. His face registered shock, followed quickly by defensive anger. A transition I'd seen countless times during our marriage. What are you talking about? Let's skip the part where you deny everything, then admit to a small portion when presented with evidence, then blame external factors for your choices. I've already seen that episode, and the reruns aren't improving with age. Noah appeared at the top of the stairs, camera conspicuously absent for once. Hey, Dad. Noah. Archie nodded. Could you give your mom and me a minute? Sure, Noah replied. Just so you know, though, the walls in this house are pretty thin. Like, I can hear everything thin. Almost as thin as dating your ex-wife's sister while cheating on her thin. Archie's jaw tightened. That's enough, Noah. Is it? Because it feels like we're just getting started. My son descended a few steps. Mom said I should give you privacy, but I wanted to say something first. That documentary I've been making? It's not actually for school. It's for me. To understand how families break and rebuild. And you know what I've learned? Archie and I both stood frozen, listening. Some things break because they were designed to fail from the beginning, like relationships built on lies. Noah looked directly at his father. I'm going to my room now, but just remember, I've gotten really good at audio editing. Great skill for college applications. He retreated upstairs, leaving behind a silence heavy with implication. Archie ran a hand through his hair. What have you been telling him about me? Nothing he hasn't figured out himself. Noah has something you seem to lack, observational skills. Thea called me crying today, he said, changing tactics. You showed her some doctored photos and texts trying to sabotage our relationship. That's a new low, Sylvie, even for you. I laughed, genuinely amused by his audacity. I'll admit, I expected denial, but calling actual evidence doctored? That's creative. Did you use that line with your SoulCycle girlfriend too when Thea asked about the late-night sessions? His expression confirmed everything. Look, it's complicated. It's really not, I interrupted. It's actually impressively simple. You cannot be faithful to save your life. It's pathological at this point. I came here to talk about co-parenting, not to be ambushed about my personal life. Your personal life became fair game the moment you decided to date my sister. You crossed the line from ex-husband to family wrecking ball. Archie paced the entryway, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Fine. Yes, Melissa and I had a thing, but it wasn't serious. And Thea and I are working through it. Congratulations. I'm sure your couple's therapist will find your serial infidelity fascinating. Maybe you can get a group discount if you include all your romantic interests. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He accused. Seeing me suffer. I considered his question seriously. You know what? A week ago, I probably would have been. But now, I mostly feel sorry for you. That stopped him. Sorry for me? Yes, because you're going to spend your entire life chasing the next dopamine hit of new attention, never actually experiencing the depth that comes from genuine commitment. You'll never know what it feels like to be truly known by someone and loved anyway. For a moment, vulnerability cracked through his defensive exterior. Sylvie, save it. I didn't invite you here for closure or reconciliation. I invited you to tell you I'm done playing supporting character in your ongoing drama. Noah and I are writing our own story now. What does that mean exactly? It means I want you to leave. It means when you inevitably crash and burn with Thea, you don't come looking to me for emotional support or validation. It means I've graduated from being your ex-wife to being your past, period. He stood still for a moment, processing. And Noah? Noah will always be your son. But he's also becoming a remarkably insightful young man who sees more than you give him credit for. My suggestion? Start being worthy of his observation. Archie nodded slowly, the realization that he'd lost more than just a marriage finally dawning on him. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For all of it. I know, I said, opening the front door. But sorry doesn't unring bells or unbreak trust. It's just a word. After he left, I found Noah sitting on the landing, pretending he hadn't been eavesdropping. Is he gone? He asked. For now. Maybe for good in some ways. Are you okay? I sat beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. Surprisingly, yes. Better than I've been in a long time. 3 months later, I hosted another barbecue in my backyard. The guest list was smaller this time, just friends who had earned their place in our rebuilt life. Noah was documenting this gathering too, but with a different focus. What happens after the explosion, when the dust settles and new growth begins? Thea came, without Archie. Our relationship was tentatively healing, one awkward coffee date at a time. She'd changed the locks on both her heart and her yoga studio, and was slowly becoming the sister I remembered from before relationships complicated everything. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across my lawn, Noah set up his camera on a tripod and gathered everyone for a group photo. Shouldn't you be in it too? I asked. Nope, I'm the documentarian. I capture the stories. I don't star in them. I looked around at our mismatched family, repaired in some places, still fractured in others, but authentically ours. You know what they never tell you about happy endings? I said to no one in particular. What's that? Thea asked. They're never actually endings. They're just peaceful pauses before the next chapter begins. As Noah counted down for the photo, I raised my glass in a silent toast to broken patterns, hard truths, and the unexpected freedom that comes from finally stopping the dance you've been performing your entire life. Turns out, independence isn't just a holiday. Sometimes it's a hard-won state of being that tastes surprisingly like victory with a side of perfectly grilled hamburgers. No drowning photo albums required.
I unexpectedly came home early from walking my dog. Through the slightly open door, I saw my husband putting sleeping pills into my teacup. That night, I poured it out when he wasn't looking. He quickly left when he saw I was sound asleep. I was deeply shocked when I secretly drove after him and saw him being intimate with Jessica, my cousin, the one I had once cared for like a real sister. Before I reveal all the actions that made them tremble, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll tell you everything right now. My name is Kimberly, 37 years old, currently the manager of Lux Gems, a high-end jewelry store in downtown Detroit, Michigan. And I began to sense that something was off with Walter, my husband, an insurance agent. One evening, while I was washing the dishes, I caught him softly laughing, his eyes glowing as he looked at his phone. That smile, the one that had made me fall in love with him at first sight, now felt distant and unfamiliar. I suggested we take a vacation in Hawaii, the place he had once promised to take me after our wedding. He replied dryly, "We can't afford that, honey." I said nothing. I knew our joint account still had over $27,000, and it was clear he wasn't short on money, only short on honesty. That night, he made me a cup of chamomile tea, saying it would help me sleep better after a long, tiring day. I thanked him, lifted the cup, and took a few sips. The tea tasted as gently sweet as always, but just minutes later, my heart started racing strangely. My eyelids grew heavy, and I drifted off without realizing when. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, my head was spinning. My body felt heavy and achy, like I had just come down with a mild flu. I tried to fight it with a strong coffee, but the fatigue clung to me like a shadow. At the office, while I was arranging the display case, a young employee joked, "Kimberly, you look exhausted. Rough night with the husband, huh?" She giggled, and I forced a faint smile, saying nothing. In my mind, there wasn't a hint of embarrassment, only one question echoed. Why am I this tired? That evening, I took our dog Cooper out for our usual walk. It was a routine I'd kept for years. Every evening after dinner, I would walk Cooper down the street lined with red maple trees, listening to music as we strolled. But tonight, just 3 houses down, I realized I had forgotten my headphones, the ones I always used for listening to YouTube podcasts or soft music. I turned back to get them. As I stepped up to the kitchen door, I froze. Through the crack of the slightly ajar door, I saw Walter standing by the table, holding a small white pill, gently dropping it into my teacup. He stirred it carefully, glanced around the room, then sighed in relief, like completing a familiar routine. I stood behind the door, my hand clutching Cooper's leash so tightly my knuckles turned white. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't understand why he was doing it, or what he intended to do once I fell asleep. I took a step back, heart pounding, yet my mind was unusually clear. I knew I couldn't react now. I needed to know the truth. I had to let him believe I was still as naive as ever. I quietly turned away, held Cooper close, and walked outside again, pretending I was just continuing our evening stroll. I forced my breathing to steady, took a longer route around the neighborhood for another 15 minutes to calm myself. When I returned, I put away Cooper's leash, smiled softly, and hummed a few random lines like nothing had happened. Walter was sitting in the living room, looking calm. I walked over, picked up the tea he had prepared, raised it to my lips, and pretended to take a small sip. He looked at me and gave a gentle smile. "Drink it all. Chamomile helps you sleep better." I smiled back and gently said, "Thanks. I'll drink it all before bed." Then I carried the cup to the bedroom, quietly closing the door behind me. The yellow light cast shadows on the wall. I stood still for a few seconds, then opened the window and poured the entire cup of tea outside. The cool, damp air of Detroit's night rushed in, sharpening my senses like never before. I placed the empty cup on the table, turned off the light, lay down, and closed my eyes. Every breath, every heartbeat, a performance. In the darkness, I thought of only one thing. Tonight, I will learn the truth. I lay still on the bed, still in my thin pajamas, my eyes gently closed. The hallway light slipped through the crack of the door, casting a narrow streak of brightness across the floor. I could clearly hear Walter's footsteps pacing in the living room, the faint clink of a teacup against the table. Then silence. A few minutes later, the bedroom door creaked open. He called my name softly, his voice tender as always. "Kimberly, are you asleep?" I kept my breathing even suppressing a faint sigh so he would think I was deeply asleep. His footsteps approached, stopping beside the bed. I felt his breath on my forehead, that familiar woody cologne. A hand gently tugged the blanket up to my shoulders. He whispered, "Sleep well." I heard him step back, the rustle of his shirt, then the sound of a drawer sliding open. A series of small noises followed. He was probably changing his shirt. The door closed softly, and his footsteps faded away, followed by the quiet click of the front door opening. I waited 5 more minutes. In the darkness, my heart pounded so loudly I could hear every beat. My muscles tensed with anticipation. When I was certain he had gotten into his Toyota, I sat up, threw on a light jacket, grabbed the car keys from the desk drawer, and carefully descended the stairs. The house was so quiet, I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Cooper lifted his head, eyes wide, but I placed my hand on his head, silently signaling him to stay quiet. The Detroit air was cool, the wind brushing through the maple trees, making the leaves rustle softly. I opened the garage door just as Walter's car turned the corner and disappeared to the right, then got into my Lexus RX 350. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted the key. It took a few seconds before I could steady my breathing. I turned off the garage light, only switching on the headlights once I reached the end of the street. In the distance, I saw the red glow of Walter's taillights as his sedan turned right at the intersection. I kept a distance of about 200 feet, driving slowly, my eyes fixed on the faint pulse of red ahead. Hundreds of thoughts raced through my mind. Maybe he was just meeting a friend. Maybe I was overthinking. But then, the image of the white pill dissolving into my tea returned. Every trace of trust shattered. I gripped the steering wheel, bit my lip until I tasted blood. But I kept driving, following him. We passed through the downtown area, the shops already closed, the neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Finally, Walter turned into the Madison Lofts, and I knew exactly who lived there. Jessica, my cousin, the girl I had once cared for as if she were my own sister. I turned off my headlights, parked at a safe distance, my heartbeat loud in my chest. I watched him park, turn off his engine, and step out. The apartment on the third floor lit up. Then its door opened. A woman stepped out to greet him. Slender figure, brown hair glowing under the hallway light. Jessica. I didn't need to see her face to know. Every movement was unmistakably hers. They embraced naturally, effortlessly, as if this weren't a secret at all, but a routine. The door closed behind them. The apartment bathed in a soft, golden light. I sat in the car, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. There were no more excuses left to console myself with. The truth stood before me, cold and merciless, like the Detroit night enveloping me. From inside my car, through the faintly lit window of the third-floor apartment, I saw Walter and Jessica kissing passionately. They stood close by the window, laughing and whispering like lovers long accustomed to each other, not like two people hiding an affair. Walter bent down to kiss her shoulder, and Jessica tilted her head, smiling, her hand resting on his chest in a way that spoke of familiarity, of repetition. I sat frozen, my chest tightening, breath trapped inside me. My heart pounded, not out of fear, but from a humiliation so deep it numbed my body. Jessica, the girl I once called my sister. When her parents died in a car accident nearly 20 years ago, she was only 12. My parents took her in, and I treated her as family. I was in my final year of high school then, and I saw her as part of my world, my responsibility. I taught her to cook, to do her hair, drove her to school, even cut down my part-time hours at the grocery store so I could take her to her first modeling photo shoots. I thought caring for Jessica was how I kept a small remnant of warmth in our family because we had no one else left. I remember vividly the day she texted me, "Sis, I just got hired as a model for a local fashion brand." "I'll make you proud," I cried out of happiness. I believed in her effort. I believed my love had meant something. But in recent years, Jessica changed. She built an online image, became a fashion influencer on Instagram, posting mirror selfies, luxury parties, beach trips with captions about freedom and hustle. I still followed her, still supported her, often the first to hit, like on her posts. This apartment, the one she's now sharing with my husband, I helped her get it. When she said she needed a professional space for her new brand deal, I didn't hesitate to lend her $35,000 for the deposit. She hugged me through tears, saying, "You're the only family I have left." That sentence now echoed in my mind, tasting like poison. The golden light from her apartment reflected off my windshield, illuminating my tear-streaked eyes. Walter stood behind her now, his arms wrapped around her waist, kissing her neck. They laughed, raised their wine glasses, and toasted. The image etched itself into me, like a blade carving deep into flesh. I saw myself, the woman who believed marriage was a safe harbor, being erased from the story of my own life, replaced by the very person I once saved. For a moment, I wanted to fling open the car door, storm upstairs, pound on that door, scream until the neighbors heard everything, but a frail thread of reason held me back. I knew if I did that, everything would explode into chaos. I needed proof. I needed the truth laid bare, undeniable. I picked up my phone, turned on the camera, zoomed in as far as it would go, and recorded every moment. The light from their apartment framed them perfectly, capturing everything I needed. That light, in the quiet Detroit night, exposed more than their betrayal. It exposed the ruins of everything I had ever believed in. Love, family, kindness, all trampled beneath their feet. I wasn't just betrayed as a wife. I was betrayed by the very person I had raised, loved, and called my sister. I held my phone tightly in my hand. Their movements, the embraces, the kisses, the looks, played out on the small screen like a film I never imagined I would have to watch. Then, suddenly, a hand reached out and drew the curtains shut. The recording ended. I sat in the car for several minutes, not crying, not screaming, but unable to stop my mind from spinning. I closed my eyes and imagined them, on that sofa I had gifted her, his hands unbuttoning her blouse one by one, until nothing was left but two filthy bodies colliding in the dark. When I opened my eyes, I felt hollow, as if all the air had been sucked from my lungs. Outside, Detroit remained indifferent, slick asphalt gleaming under streetlights, a few taxis passing by, the distant blare of a horn melting into the wind. Everything looked cruelly ordinary. I started the car and turned around. On the way home, tears began to fall. Not in sobs, but quietly, like drizzle tracing down the windshield. I used to think that if my husband ever cheated, I'd lose control. I'd scream, smash things, unleash everything inside me. But no, when truth finally struck, I found a strange calm instead, the kind of calm that comes after you've been destroyed, when you know there's nothing left to lose. When I returned home, I turned off the living room lights, removed my jacket, and lay back down in bed, still in the same old pajamas, pretending to be asleep, pretending I had never left. I lay there, eyes closed, unable to truly sleep. The room was utterly silent, only the ticking clock breaking the stillness. Each tick felt like a blade scraping through my thoughts. I remembered our wedding day at St. Mary's Church. Me in a lace-white dress, my hands trembling around a bouquet of hydrangeas. Walter kneeling before me, his gaze warm, his voice solemn in the echoing chapel. I promise to love you for life, to never betray you. I had believed him. I had believed him with everything I had. Now that vow replayed in my mind like a warped melody, so painful I could barely breathe. I opened my eyes, staring at the ceiling in the dark, tears slipping down soundlessly. Around 2 a.m, I heard the door open. Walter was back. The jingle of keys, the thud of his shoes. He hummed softly, took off his coat, and tiptoed into the bedroom. I held my breath, turned slightly to my side, eyes closed. The mattress dipped as he lay down beside me, and a faint, unfamiliar perfume clung to his shirt, a scent that wasn't mine. His breathing soon steadied, and within minutes he was asleep. I lay still, staring into the darkness, counting the beats of my own heart. I didn't cry. The pain had moved beyond tears. It was now a deep, throbbing wound pulsing inside my chest. When dawn broke and sunlight seeped through the curtains, I heard the shower running. Walter was up early, getting ready for work, as if nothing had happened. I quietly slipped out of bed, walked barefoot into the kitchen. His phone was there on the table, the screen lighting up briefly before going dark again. No new password. He still believed I'd never touch his things. I opened his messages and scrolled down. There it was, a thread between him and Jessica. I read each line, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. Baby, she still suspects nothing. I gave her the pill. She'll be out in 10 minutes. My blood turned cold. They weren't just cheating, they were conspiring, calculating every dose, every moment to keep me unconscious so they could meet in secret. I scrolled further. Beneath those texts was something worse, a plan. Once you move here next year, I'll redo the house paperwork. Everything will be under our names. Remember to use that signature sample. You copy it perfectly. I stopped at that line, my vision blurring. They didn't just want my husband. They wanted everything. My house, my assets, my life. Revulsion surged through me. I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to myself, then carefully placed his phone back where it had been. When he stepped out, hair still damp, he smiled casually. "You're up early." I turned to him, replying softly, "Yeah, I was going to make some tea." He kissed my cheek lightly, as if the night before had been nothing but a dream. But inside me, that dream had died. From that moment on, I knew I was no longer a trusting wife. I had become a witness to my own marriage, and the first piece of evidence was already in my hands. That afternoon, after I returned from work, I sent Jessica a short message. "Are you free tonight? I'd love to have dinner with you. Heard you just signed a new ad deal. Congrats." A few minutes later, she replied, "Of course, I'll be right over." I looked at the phone screen, a faint curl at the corner of my mouth. Perhaps Jessica still thought of me as the naive older sister, easy to trust, always ready to forgive. I prepared the dinner table carefully: grilled steak, strawberry salad, the red wine she liked. The aroma filled the kitchen, stirring memories of when we used to cook together when she was young. But tonight, this meal wasn't for celebration. It was to mark the end. Jessica arrived promptly at 7, wearing a beige mini dress, strong perfume, her face immaculately made up. "You're always so thoughtful," she smiled, placing her handbag on the chair. Moments later, Walter stepped out from the study, feigning surprise. "Jessica?" "Wow, it's been a while." He played it well. If I hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed him. We had dinner in stiff silence, the clink of cutlery dry and mechanical. Walter tried to make jokes about work. Jessica responded with hollow laughs. I sat still, listening to two traders perform for each other, as if testing how much I knew. Midway through the meal, I set down my glass, took out my phone. Without a word, I played the video from the Madison lofts. The warm light, the glowing window, two silhouettes embracing, clear as day. The audio was soft, but enough to hear their laughter. The room froze. Jessica turned pale, bit her lip, hands trembling as her fork fell with a loud clang. Walter forced a nervous smile. "You misunderstood. It was just a drunk mistake. I just dropped something off." Jessica cut in, voice shaking, still trying to sound proud. "You didn't have to go that far." "Everyone makes mistakes. I know I messed up, but did you really have to record it?" I looked at them, not with anger, but cold detachment. "A mistake?" I said quietly, my voice frighteningly steady. "Mistakes don't last for months. And mistakes don't need sleeping pills to be hidden." Walter went silent. Jessica dropped her gaze. The room sank into dead silence, broken only by the ticking clock. I pulled a folded debt note from an envelope and laid it in front of Jessica. $35,000. "When do you plan to pay it back?" She glanced at it, then forced a smile. "Just consider it a gift, sis. You're not short on money. And hey, if it weren't for me, who'd keep your husband company while you're working?" I stared at her. "You're clever, Jessica." "But you forgot. Gifts require consent." Walter slammed his hand on the table, voice rising. "Enough! What are you gonna do? Divorce me?" I looked at him, my calm enough to make him recoil slightly. "Not gonna," I said. "I already am." The room fell silent again. Jessica looked around, attempting a smile, but it failed. Walter picked up his wineglass and smashed it onto the floor, red wine spreading like a thin trail of blood across the wood. I didn't flinch. Inside me, pain had transformed into something else. Cold, precise, irreversible. The room was so heavy it felt like the air could be sliced. I stood up slowly, without a word. Walter and Jessica were both silent. Just the golden light casting shadows over shattered glass and the spreading wine stain on the floor. Strangely, it made me feel like I could breathe again. Maybe because finally, the truth had surfaced. I didn't look at them again. I turned and walked up the stairs, step by step, my heels clicking in the stillness. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and pulled out my old suitcase. The items I once imagined would journey with me through this marriage now waited silently in drawers. The white wedding dress, photo albums, birthday cards. I opened a smaller drawer and took out the necklace my mother had given me, a silver chain with a heart pendant, the one item I'd always kept close as a symbol of the pure love I once believed in. I placed it in my coat pocket and began packing. Each item into the suitcase was a memory being sealed shut. The shirt from our first trip, the wedding frame from Lake Michigan, the 10th anniversary card that read, "Forever yours." I chuckled. Forever sounded like a cruel joke now. Behind me, footsteps. Walter stood at the door, his face red, voice rough with rage. You're really leaving? Over a misunderstanding? I didn't answer, just kept folding clothes. He grabbed my arm, trying to stop me. Kimberly, stop! You're ruining everything! I turned, looked him in the eye. No, Walter, you already did that. His grip loosened. He stood frozen, then turned away. At the stairway, Jessica still stood, clutching her purse, eyes downcast. She said nothing, perhaps searching for words she didn't dare speak. I looked at her one last time. Don't say anything, I said quietly. You two deserve each other. I rolled my suitcase down the stairs. The wheels thudded on the wooden floor like heartbeats turning to silence. At the door, I glanced back one last time. This house, once filled with laughter, now held only emptiness. I didn't let them speak another word. The door clicked shut behind me, soft but final. The Detroit night wind swept through my hair, cold but fresh. I walked into the long streetlights glowing faintly on the thin snow, and thought, some departures don't need goodbyes, because silence sometimes is the clearest answer of all. I rolled my suitcase to the doorstep of Lily's apartment, my best friend from college. She was an art teacher at the local high school, the kind of woman who brought light with her wherever she went. When she saw me on her porch, eyes swollen, face pale, Lily didn't ask anything. She simply opened her arms and pulled me into a hug. Come in, she said softly but firmly. I already made ginger tea. We sat on our old sofa draped in a wool blanket. I told her everything, from the drugged tea, to the Madison lofts, to the confrontation at dinner. Lily didn't interrupt, only listened, her eyes darkening each time my voice shook. When I finished, silence settled between us. She placed her teacup on the table, looked at me directly. Kimberly, I know this hurts like hell, but listen to me. What you need now isn't tears. It's action. I looked up. Action? Yes. Action to reclaim what's yours. Don't let them define who you are. Her words, simple but powerful, sparked something inside me. I nodded, wiped my tears. All right. Tomorrow, I start the next morning. Light rain fell over Detroit. I wore a sweater, tied my hair back, and visited attorney Sarah Carter, a specialist in divorce and asset protection. Her office, inside a historic building downtown, smelled of old wood and fresh coffee. Sarah, in her 50s, had a stern face but kind eyes. She listened to my full story without interruption, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, she nodded. Kimberly, I reviewed the deed. The Birmingham house is solely in your name, purchased before the marriage. It's not marital property. Walter has no legal claim to it. I straightened, heart pounding. So I can evict him? Yes, but we'll do it cleanly, legally, no room for maneuvering. You'll need solid evidence of the affair, forged signatures, any financial misconduct. I met her gaze, voice steady. I have the video, texts, screenshots. Sarah smiled faintly. Good. Don't let emotion drive this. Let the truth do its job. I stepped out just as the rain stopped. The air smelled of wet leaves and earth, crisp and cold. I looked up at the gray sky, and something inside me stirred. Not anger, but survival. For the first time in months, I knew I was finally heading the right way. A week later, around midday, my phone buzzed. An email from First National Bank flashed on the screen with the subject line, Transaction in process, home sale verification. I froze in the middle of the store, a chill shooting down my spine. I had never submitted any request to sell the house. I opened the email. Attached was a draft contract for the sale of the Birmingham house, priced nearly $80,000 below market value. The seller field bore my name in bold, but the signature below, crooked, shaky, nothing like mine, was a forgery. I zoomed in, examining every line. Fraud. The buyer's name, Nina Brooks, a single mother of two, working as an accountant. I immediately called my attorney, Sarah Carter. "Sarah, they're trying to sell my house using a fake signature." Her voice was calm but firm. "Keep that email intact. Don't delete anything. Forward everything to me. I'll contact the bank and title company now." 15 minutes later, Sarah connected a three-way call with the title officer and the bank's fraud investigator. I listened as her voice, steady and authoritative, filled the call. "I represent Kimberly Collins, the legal owner of the Birmingham property. There is clear evidence of identity theft and a forged signature. We are requesting an immediate fraud hold on the file and a full freeze on escrow until proper verification is completed." The bank confirmed the fraud hold had been activated, halting all transactions until I could present ID in person. Sarah instructed me to prepare a notarized affidavit of ownership, a copy of the property deed, and verified signature samples. That same afternoon, I went to her office and signed the affidavit. Sarah submitted everything securely to the bank and title company, along with an official federal identity theft notice, a legal requirement forcing the transaction to pause. 3 hours later, I received confirmation. Fraud hold in effect. Escrow temporarily frozen pending investigation. It was just in time. A few more hours and the house might have been sold under a fake identity. Sarah outlined the next steps. "We'll file an identity theft report and real estate fraud complaint with the Wayne County Sheriff's Office. Once we have a case number, the legal records for the house will be flagged as under investigation. No one can sell or transfer it until this is resolved." I sent her all messages between Walter and Jessica referencing that signature sample, along with the video from the Madison lofts. Sarah said, "Good, Kimberly. This isn't just proof of betrayal. This is criminal evidence." When I hung up, I looked out at the late afternoon light reflecting off the glass facade of the bank across the street. Everything mirrored back my face, tired but unbroken. I glanced again at the buyer's name in the email. Nina Brooks, a single mother, 2 kids, just looking for a safe home. They had picked the perfect victim to legitimize their crime. I asked the title company for Nina's contact info. Her voice trembled on the phone. "I already paid a deposit. I had no idea." I took a breath. "It's okay, Nina. You did nothing wrong. I'll make sure the bank refunds you, and we'll stop them, together." On the other end, I heard a little girl's voice. "Mommy?" Then Nina's choked reply. "Thank you, truly." I ended the call, leaning against the glass wall. The anger I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. They hadn't just betrayed me. They tried to steal my life, and this time, they would face justice. A few days after the fraud file was submitted to the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, I was called in to provide further evidence. I sat under white fluorescent lights in an interview room, facing Detective Harris, a sharp-eyed, calm-voiced middle-aged woman. I handed her a USB drive containing everything: the Madison Lofts video, the text exchanges between Walter and Jessica, the forged contract, signature comparisons. Harris flipped through the files, nodding. "You did very well, Kimberly. We'll proceed with a search of your husband's devices and financial history." 2 days later, on a Thursday morning, I got a call from Sarah. Her voice carried a rare note of satisfaction. "They found it." On Walter's laptop, police discovered the forged contract and a scanned copy of my ID, stored in a password-protected folder labeled sharedfuture.docs. They also uncovered email logs with a real estate agent, where Walter impersonated me to confirm approval to sell. All of it was documented and sealed under case number 2417-WCFD. But that wasn't all. When police reviewed credit card statements, they found Jessica had used my supplementary card, originally issued for family use, to buy plane tickets to Miami, book luxury hotels, and charge over $5,200 in just 4 days. Her phone's image gallery showed boarding passes, spy receipts, all under Kimberly Collins. The identity theft was undeniable. News spread faster than I expected. 3 days later, the Detroit Free Press ran a headline: local insurance agent under investigation for fraud and identity theft. Beneath it, a grainy photo of Walter being questioned at his office. An inside source confirmed he'd been suspended indefinitely from Great Lakes Mutual Insurance pending investigation. I read the article in a quiet downtown cafe, sipping bitter espresso. What I felt wasn't joy, but a deep, quiet relief. I didn't need revenge. I needed the law to speak. That afternoon, Jessica posted a final message on Instagram. Sometimes, people only see the mistakes, not the reasons behind them. Within an hour, the post disappeared. Thousands unfollowed her overnight. Aura Collective canceled their endorsement deal. Her profile was flooded with criticism, comments locked. I no longer felt anger. Instead, I felt a strange quiet, like the stillness after a storm, when gray skies begin to clear. Things were beginning to return to their rightful place. Sarah called later that evening, her voice measured. Kimberly, the DA is preparing formal charges. They'll face counts of identity theft and asset fraud. But most importantly, you've taken back control of your life. I looked out the window, where the last light of day reflected off Detroit's glass towers. And in that moment, I knew she was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was simply living, and living on my terms. On Monday morning, the sky over Detroit hung heavy with gray clouds. I had just poured coffee when Detective Harris called. "We're executing the arrest warrant," she said plainly. "You don't need to come. But I thought you should know. It's ending." Less than an hour later, I received a video from a local journalist showing police storming the Madison Lofts apartment. Loud knocks on the door, followed by shouts, "Detroit Police Department!" Open the door. Inside, Walter opened the door, pale-faced, barely able to mutter, "There's been a mistake," before he was handcuffed. Jessica, disheveled and wide-eyed, stood behind him. She tried to hide her phone in her robe pocket, but it was confiscated on the spot. Their faces were captured clearly in the footage, confused, desperate. That night, every local news station aired the story. The headline scrolled across the screen. Couple arrested for identity theft and financial fraud in Birmingham real estate case. Walter was charged with identity theft and financial fraud. Jessica was charged as an accomplice, fully aware of the forgery and participating in its execution. When the footage played, I sat in Lily's living room, silent. I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet. The man I once called my husband now appeared under flashing blue and red lights, wrists bound, eyes hollow. Weeks later, at the Wayne County court hearing, Walter pleaded guilty. His voice trembled as he said, "I'm sorry," but it meant nothing. Both accepted a plea bargain, 5 years probation, $50,000 restitution to me and the bank, and hundreds of hours of community service. I sat in the back row, watching them sign the deal. In that moment, I no longer saw two traitors, just two empty people consumed by their own greed. When the hearing ended, I stepped out into the freezing Detroit air, autumn leaves swirling around my boots. I looked up, breathed deep, the weight in my chest finally lifting. As for Jessica, her social media collapsed within days. Thousands of followers turned on her. Headlines screamed, "Influencer accused of stealing cousin's identity." Jessica Collins, from luxury to legal trouble. Every brand dropped her. PR accounts scrubbed her name. The internet turned colder than I expected. One last post remained on Jessica's Instagram. "I lost everything including myself." I read it, didn't comment, didn't share. I simply turned off my phone and set it face down on the table. Because justice, to me, had already been done. Silently, cleanly, without needing another word. That morning, Detroit was cloaked in fog, fine mist settling on the roads like glass. I arrived at the Birmingham house, once my home for 11 years, with attorney Sarah Carter and 2 officers. Today, it was no longer home. It was the scene of betrayal. I stood before the dark wooden door, gripping my purse tightly, holding myself together. Sarah asked gently, "Are you ready, Kimberly?" I nodded. A cop knocked firmly 3 times. No answer. Seconds later, the lock turned and the door opened. The stench of mildew and cheap alcohol hit us instantly. I stepped inside, my heart clenching. The house, once bright and clean, now looked like a junkyard. Furniture shattered, wedding photos torn apart, the TV screen smashed. On the living room wall, someone had scrawled "Gold Digger" in red lipstick. Each letter slashed into my memories. I stood still, not because it hurt, but because their pettiness astonished me. Everything they destroyed only proved how little they'd understood me, or what truly mattered in a person. Walter and Jessica were escorted downstairs. He looked worn, stubble unshaven, eyes blank. Jessica wore an old coat, her head lowered, her former pride gone. Our eyes met. Time stopped. Walter gave a dry laugh, his voice gravelly. "You win. Happy now?" I looked at him, not with anger, not with pity, just emptiness. "No," I said calmly, "but at least, I'm free." Sarah stood beside me in silence, but I felt her silent support. The officers read the final clause of the eviction order and raised the cuffs. Walter didn't resist. Jessica began to cry, but I didn't turn back. As they were led to the squad car, the red and blue lights flashed across the house's windows. I watched them disappear, the wind scattering papers left on the porch. Mist fell into my hair, cold but peaceful. I walked through the ruined room, looked around one last time. Every crack, every shard of glass, like pieces of the past, collapsing so I could move forward. Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't need to stay here anymore, Kimberly." I nodded. "I know. I just wanted to say goodbye." I took a photo of the wall, then deleted it. I didn't want to keep a trace of pain. As I stepped out, the door closed behind me, with a soft, final click. Walking to the car, I looked back once more, not out of regret, but to be sure I had left behind the place that once imprisoned my soul. In that moment, I understood. Some victories don't need applause. They only need peace, and that is freedom. And that, weeks after the legal process was complete and they were officially evicted, I returned to the Birmingham house with a renovation crew. A spring breeze swept through, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass, so crisp it calmed me. The house was nearly empty, just walls, wooden floors, and a silence that filled every corner. I stood in the living room, where the lipstick graffiti "Gold Digger" had once stained the wall, and said to the worker, "Repaint everything. Cream white. Leave no trace behind." He nodded, pulled the canvas covers down, and began. I watched them strip the broken floorboards, scrub away the old paint, hang new curtains, and wipe the windows until morning light poured in. The house gradually brightened, not just with fresh color, but with the breath of peace returning. When the crew left, I walked a slow lap around the home, lightly running my hand along the new walls, feeling the smooth scent of fresh paint. I thought of all that had happened, the betrayal, the truth, and justice. Instead of rage, I felt something empty forming inside me. Not a void of despair, but a space cleared for something new to begin. A week later, I met Nina Brooks again, the woman who had almost been defrauded. She came with her 2 children, a little boy and girl. When they stepped into the house, I saw the children's eyes light up as they looked at the big windows and the backyard garden. Nina turned to me, her voice choking. "I didn't think you'd still sell the house to me after everything." I smiled. "It's because of everything that I wanted to." I asked for exactly the agreed price. No discounts, no increases. Because I believed Nina and her children needed this house more than I did. To me, this wasn't just a transaction. It was a way to close a chapter, with kindness instead of bitterness. When they signed the papers and took the keys, Nina hugged me tightly. "You didn't just give me a home," she said. "You gave me hope." I returned the smile. "You don't know this, But you and your children just gave that hope back to me. That afternoon, as I drove away from Birmingham, I glanced at the rearview mirror. Sunlight shone on the freshly painted house, windows wide open, the sound of children laughing echoing from inside. A quiet peace settled in me. Everything had been washed clean, not just the walls, but my past. I started the car, turned onto the highway, and felt light, like a heavy stone had been lifted from my chest. Maybe freedom doesn't always come from leaving, but from learning to forgive without needing to forget. I moved into a small apartment in Midtown Detroit, nestled in a historic red brick building overlooking Cass Park. It wasn't large, but it was full of sunlight. In the mornings, when sunlight filtered through the windows, dancing across the cream-colored walls, I felt like I was living somewhere entirely new. Not because the address had changed, but because I had. I kept life simple in those first weeks. Each morning, I unrolled a yoga mat by the window, breathing deep, feeling my heartbeat return to a steady, peaceful rhythm. I practiced cooking, trying recipes I'd never had time for before. The hiss of boiling water, the scent of garlic and onion, the gentle clink of spoons and pans. Those small sounds became the rhythm of a new life. One evening, watching the city through the glass, I opened my laptop and started a project I had long dreamed of, a podcast called Silent No More. It would be a place to share my journey through betrayal, rediscovering self-worth, and learning to draw boundaries unapologetically. I didn't want to tell stories to complain. I wanted to speak so that other women, whether they were 20 or 60, could understand that silence isn't weakness. It's the beginning of awakening. For the first episode, I invited Lily as my guest. She sat across from me, hair tied high, a cup of tea in hand. Her voice was soft but firm. "Kimberly, I remember the night you came to my door, eyes swollen. You didn't say much, just sat quietly. But you know what? It was that silence that made me believe you'd make it. Because your silence was the beginning of justice, I looked at her and smiled. A smile I once thought would never return. In front of me was a microphone. Behind me, a city in transition. I knew my healing wasn't finished, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of how long it might take. Because now, every story I shared, every thank you letter from another woman, every ray of morning light through that window, all reminded me that I had walked through darkness and still chose to speak, to love, and to live. One summer afternoon, as golden sunlight spread across the glass windows of a small jewelry store on Woodward Avenue, I stood before the display case, my fingers brushing over a row of glistening rings. This time, no one stood beside me. No Walter to offer opinions, no compliments, no nods of approval. I chose for myself. I paused before a white gold ring with a single small diamond. Elegant, simple. On the inside band, one word was engraved: resilience. I smiled. That word, to me, meant more than just strength. It was rebirth after ruin, proof that even after betrayal and loss, I could stand tall on my own. I paid for it myself, signed the receipt, feeling lighter as if completing a long overdue rite of passage. That evening, I opened the closet and pulled out Walter's old suitcase, the one he used for business trips, sometimes to hide secrets I never wanted to discover. I looked at it one last time, then carried it to the dumpster behind the apartment building. The sound of the lid slamming shut echoed dryly, but to me, it was the sound of release. I returned inside and placed a new teal suitcase in the corner of the room. The color of the ocean, the color of freedom. I sat on the floor, opened my laptop, and searched for flights to Hawaii. Not to escape, but to begin. I wanted to feel warm sand beneath my feet, hear the ocean's rhythm, breathe in salt air mixed with coconut, and know that I was truly alive. After booking the flight, I took off the new ring and placed it on the table, watching it catch the light from my desk lamp. Tiny glints of light pulsed like the beat of hope. I whispered, "Resilience." No vows, no witnesses, just a silent promise between me and myself I will never again let anyone define my worth. 1 year later, my life had completely changed. The small apartment in Midtown now bloomed with sunlight, my desk corner filled with lavender and postcards from all over Seattle, Dallas, New York. Each one came from women who had listened to Silent No More. They shared stories of marriages they had found the courage to leave, boundaries they had finally set, nights they no longer cried alone. I read each letter, feeling my heart slowly mend through their words. One June afternoon, I recorded a special episode, marking exactly 1 year since I left the old house. Microphone in front of me, I looked at the light reflecting off my resilience ring and smiled. My voice came low but firm. If someone slips sleeping pills into your tea, wake up. Because truth never sleeps. I paused, breathed deep, and looked out the window where Detroit's sky melted into twilight. I used to think freedom meant walking away. Now I know, real freedom is choosing peace. No matter where you are, no matter what you've lost, if you have room for light in your heart, you can begin again. When the episode aired, millions listened, mostly middle-aged women, and the excerpt went viral across social media. It became a message, a reminder, for anyone still trapped in silence. If my story reached you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment with the number 1 to let me know my journey resonated with yours.